You've probably been told that if you want something badly enough, you just have to fight for it. Push harder, hold on tighter, and never let go. But what no one says out loud is that sometimes the more you try to force things into place, the more they slip through your hands. Because life doesn't respond to pressure, it responds to alignment. And when your energy is rooted in fear, control, or desperation, even your best efforts can feel like running on a treadmill that never stops. This isn't a message about quitting. It's about choosing peace over panic. It's about letting go of timelines that don't belong to you, expectations that exhaust you, and beliefs that tell you you're only worthy when you're producing. This is about learning to surrender, not as a form of weakness, but as the most powerful act of clarity and trust. It's where the real flow begins. If you've been carrying the weight of trying to hold everything together, this video is for you. You're not behind, you're being prepared. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop forcing what was never yours to carry. We're going to explore the stoic power of letting go and why life begins to respond when you finally stop trying to control it. If this speaks to something inside you, subscribe. And when you're ready, share your story below. Someone out there might need your quiet courage more than you know. 1. Your energy attracts more than your effort. It's not always about doing more. In fact, many times, doing more only pushes what you want even farther away. What truly shifts the direction of your life is not how hard you work, but the energy behind your effort. People don't just respond to your actions. They respond to the quiet, invisible current you carry when you enter a room, speak a sentence, or pursue a goal. You could be sending out 100 job applications, working late nights, hustling non-stop. But if what's driving you is fear, doubt, or the need to prove your worth, then that energy speaks louder than any words you say. And people feel it, even when they can't explain why. There's a weight you carry when you act from desperation. It changes your tone, it alters your posture, it leaks into your decisions. You may appear successful, but underneath, something never settles. That's because energy rooted in scarcity always seeks validation, not peace. But energy born from clarity, calm, rooted, self-assured, has a way of attracting the right outcomes without chasing them. This isn't about becoming passive, it's about moving from force to presence. That presence is quiet. It doesn't need to shout, it doesn't scramble to convince. It simply arrives, whole, steady, and unbothered. In the Stoic way, self-control isn't just about what you restrain, it's about what you radiate. You're either radiating emotional clarity, or you're broadcasting inner tension. Marcus Aurelius spoke often about the inner citadel, the idea that your inner state is your real kingdom. If that space is ruled by anxiety, the outside world becomes chaotic. But if that space is ruled by calm attention, the world begins to shift with you. The truth is, people can feel if you're centered. They can also sense when you're chasing something that you think will complete you, and the world responds accordingly. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who wasn't the loudest, the smartest, or the most decorated in the room, but something about their calm, grounded presence drew others in? They weren't forcing anything. They were aligned. That's the magnetism of surrender. It's not about dropping your standards or giving up your ambition. It's about refining the source it flows from. When your pursuit is no longer about proving something to others, but expressing something true within you, the effort stops draining you. It starts sustaining you. This shift begins when you stop asking, "What more can I do?" and start asking, "Where am I doing too much from the wrong energy?" Stop trying to earn your worth through struggle. Stop gripping your goals with clenched fists. Let them breathe. Let yourself breathe. And notice what happens when you act without emotional resistance. When your actions are clean, no desperation, no rush, no noise, clarity takes over. And clarity is more powerful than pressure will ever be. Real strength isn't frantic. It's focused. It knows what it's about and doesn't need applause to keep moving. That's what makes it magnetic. When you bring calm energy into what you do, the work flows differently. People notice. Conversations open up. Relationships soften. Results shift. Not because you tried harder, but because you stopped working against yourself. You aligned. And in alignment, things begin to arrive. not as a reward for struggle, but as a natural response to stillness. So if life feels like a series of locked doors right now, maybe it's not your effort that needs to change. It's the energy behind it. Adjust your presence, clean up the noise within, walk into every situation like you already belong there. Not because you're trying to prove your place, but because you're rooted in who you are. That's what people trust. That's what life responds to. And that's where real flow begins. 2. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means trusting timing. Letting go is not the same as giving up. It's a quiet decision to stop forcing something that clearly isn't aligned, not out of weakness, but from a place of deep awareness. There's a difference between persistence and attachment. One keeps you moving forward, the other keeps you stuck. We often hold on too long, not because it still makes sense, but because we're afraid of what it might mean if we let go. We fear looking like we've failed. But true failure isn't walking away. It's staying too long in something that no longer serves who you're becoming. There is strength in knowing when to release, especially when the world around you keeps telling you to hold on a little longer. I once stayed in a relationship that had already ended, emotionally, spiritually, long before we stopped talking. I wasn't there because I believed in it. I stayed because I feared the silence that would follow. I feared the feeling of losing. And in that fear, I forced something that had already expired. It drained me quietly. But when I finally stepped back, not with blame, but with stillness, I saw it clearly. I couldn't control the rhythm of another heart. I could only honor the pace of my own. That moment didn't make me feel like I gave up. It made me realize I was ready to receive something that matched who I had become. The Stoics remind us we don't control external events, only our response to them. Life has its own unfolding, its own timeline, and when we try to impose ours, we end up in friction. Timing isn't just about patience. It's about trust. Trust that the right opportunity, relationship, or direction will appear, not when you beg for it, but when you've become the version of yourself who can meet it fully. That shift from chasing to becoming, that's what changes everything. You might be clinging to something right now, a job that exhausts you, a dream that no longer fits, a person who stopped choosing you long ago, and maybe a part of you knows it's over. But you hold on because leaving feels like losing, because surrender feels like weakness. What if it isn't? What if walking away is the clearest sign of emotional strength? What if trusting the timing of your life is the real act of courage? It takes more will to release than to grasp, because grasping is driven by fear. Releasing comes from wisdom. In the philosophy of Stoicism, surrender isn't passive, it's purposeful. You're not stepping back because you've run out of options. You're stepping back because you're no longer willing to distort your values to make something work. You're no longer willing to beg for peace where there's only resistance. And that decision, quiet as it may be, shifts the energy around you. Life begins to open different doors, not because you forced them to, but because you made space for what was ready to arrive. So the next time you're torn between pushing harder or pulling back, listen carefully. Ask yourself, is this truly worth holding on to, or am I afraid of what it means to let go? If the answer is heavy, if your grip feels tight, maybe the wisest move is to release, not with bitterness, but with calm clarity. Because letting go doesn't mean you failed. It means you trust that life knows something you don't, and it means you're finally ready to stop chasing what's not for you and start walking toward what is. 3. You're not behind, you're being prepared. It's easy to feel like you're falling behind when all around you, people seem to be arriving, buying homes, building careers, starting families, while you're still trying to make sense of the road beneath your feet. But life isn't a race, and there is no single map. The path you're on was never meant to look like anyone else's. Just because your timeline is different doesn't mean you failed. It means you're still being shaped, quietly, intentionally, for something that requires more than just speed. It requires depth. And depth doesn't happen in haste. You might look around and feel like you missed the wave, like you're the only one still trying to get your footing while others seem to glide effortlessly. But here's what comparison never shows you. What they built fast may not last, and what's taking you longer might just be taking root in ways you can't yet see. Preparation often happens in silence. The growth no one claps for is the kind that strengthens you the most. In the Stoic way, it's not about how quickly you reach the finish line. It's about who you become while walking your own path. There is wisdom in the wait. There is strength in stillness. And there's unseen power in seasons where progress looks invisible to the outside world. Every time you wake up and try again, even without results, you're building something within. Every small act of showing up, of choosing discipline over distraction, of doing the right thing when no one is watching, it's not wasted. It's preparation. The world may reward outcomes, but life responds to alignment. When you're aligned, when your intentions, actions, and values move together, you don't need to catch up. You begin to move in rhythm with something deeper than pressure. Something that doesn't demand speed, but consistency. You're not stuck, you're still forming. And sometimes what feels like the delay is actually grace. It's space being carved out for a version of you who can carry more. Not with stress, but with steadiness. That kind of strength doesn't announce itself loudly. It reveals itself when you finally meet the moment that once would have broken you, and you realize you've become someone who can hold it. That's not weakness. That's inner power. And that power takes time. There may be people who doubt you, and sometimes you might be one of them. But doubt is only dangerous when you let it define your direction. Stoicism teaches us to return to the present, to take the next step, not with panic, but with presence. Even if the step is small, even if you're not sure where it's leading yet. Because often, clarity doesn't come before the action. It comes from taking the action, even while the path is still unclear. So if you're measuring your life against milestones you think you should have reached by now, pause. Ask yourself, who set those milestones? Who told you that worth is measured by how quickly you arrive? Because you're not late. You're learning what others may never stop to understand. You're not behind. You're being refined. And when the moment arrives, you won't just be ready to receive it. You'll be someone who can hold it with grace, with clarity, and with peace. Let the world rush. Let others run. You have nothing to prove to a clock that was never yours to follow. You are not on pause. You are being prepared, quietly, patiently, powerfully. And when it's time, what's meant for you will not pass you by. Not because you chased it, but because you became the version of yourself that could finally walk beside it. 4. Stillness is not laziness, it's clarity. There was a time when every quiet moment made me uneasy, as if stillness itself was a sign I was falling behind. I believed I had to always be moving, always be doing, because stopping meant I was wasting time. But in those rare pauses, when I was too exhausted to keep pushing, something surprising happened. I began to hear what I couldn't while I was busy. I began to see what I had been ignoring. And what I found wasn't laziness. It was clarity, long buried under the noise of constant motion. We live in a world that praises the grind, that worships productivity, that rewards urgency. But clarity doesn't come from speed. It comes from presence, from sitting still long enough to hear your own thoughts instead of everyone else's expectations. Stillness is not the absence of effort. It's the space where your effort realigns with purpose. It's where the noise clears and the signal returns. You don't need to keep adding more to feel like you're progressing. Sometimes you need to do less, to breathe, to recalibrate, because not everything that moves is moving forward. In Stoic philosophy, clarity is not found in chaos. It's found in order, and order begins inside. Stillness is a kind of discipline. It's a deliberate stepping back to see clearly what's actually worth stepping into. When you're always rushing, you stop choosing. You begin reacting, and the more reactive you become, the less intentional your life feels. But when you pause, when you allow space to exist between thought and action, you gain something rare in today's world: inner precision. You no longer just do what's next. You do what's right. There's a difference between being stuck and being still. Being stuck feels anxious, impatient, and desperate to escape the moment. But being still is different. It's grounded. It's aware. It's willing to stay with the discomfort long enough to understand what it's trying to reveal. That's where growth lives, not in endless momentum, but in the quiet awareness that allows you to question your direction before you exhaust yourself walking the wrong way. You might be in a season right now where everything feels slow, where you're not making the progress you hoped for, where you're tempted to fill every empty hour with more noise, more work, more movement. But before you do, ask yourself, what if this space isn't a setback, but an invitation? What if life isn't delaying you, but offering you time to return to what matters, to stop spinning long enough to recognize whether you're building a life or just keeping busy out of habit? The Stoics would say, step back, look within, choose wisely. They didn't fear silence, they cultivated it. Because in silence, you become honest. Not with the world, but with yourself. You begin to see which goals are truly yours and which were borrowed, which dreams bring peace and which feed your ego. Stillness holds those answers, but you won't find them while sprinting toward outcomes that were never aligned with you to begin with. Don't confuse stillness with stagnation. Stillness is active, it's purposeful. It takes strength to stop in a world that constantly tells you to speed up. But when you do, when you allow yourself to rest without guilt and reflect without judgment, what arises isn't weakness. It's direction. And direction, once clear, gives your next step more meaning than 1,000 rushed decisions ever could. So the next time you feel restless in your pause, remind yourself you are not falling behind. You are regaining your sense of where you're going and why you're going there. Stillness doesn't slow your life down. It sharpens your path. And sometimes that's the most productive thing you can do. 5. Surrender isn't weakness, it's focused strength. There's a quiet kind of strength in knowing when to stop giving yourself to something that no longer gives back. You might be holding on to a job that drains you, a relationship that weighs you down, or a version of yourself that no longer fits. But you stay, not because it's right, but because walking away feels like defeat. Yet real weakness isn't in letting go, it's in wasting your energy where it no longer belongs. True surrender isn't collapse, it's clarity. It's the kind of decision that comes not from fear, but from finally seeing things as they are, not as you wish they would be. When you surrender with awareness, you're not quitting, you're redirecting. You're choosing to no longer spend your power in places that only take from you. That's not avoidance, it's alignment. And alignment doesn't happen when you're trying to rescue things that resist your truth. It happens when you stop explaining yourself to people who don't hear you, and stop proving your worth to systems that never saw you clearly to begin with. It takes far more courage to release than to chase. It takes far more discipline to stop pouring into something broken than to fix it out of pride. Surrender is misunderstood because we've been taught that strength always looks like holding on. But sometimes, strength is standing still while everything inside you wants to chase. Sometimes, strength is walking away while others think you should stay. Sometimes, strength is saying, this is not mine to carry anymore, and meaning it. That choice isn't passive, it's a radical return to your own boundaries, to your time, to your energy. You don't owe your life to something that keeps asking for more while giving you less. In the stillness of surrender, something shifts. You stop pushing. You stop justifying. You stop fighting the current, and you start floating with it. That doesn't mean you've given up. It means you're finally trusting your inner sense of timing and worth. And when you start living from that place, clear, grounded, unapologetic, you begin to see how much of your life was built on trying to prove something instead of protecting something. What you protect now is different. Your peace, your presence, your purpose. And what's real in your life will meet you there, without you needing to beg it to stay. In Stoic thought, surrender is not a retreat from action. It's the refinement of action. It's choosing where to invest your energy with intention. You don't need to fix everything. You just need to choose where to stand strong and where to let go. Because the mind becomes heavy when it holds what was never meant for it, and the heart grows tired when it keeps showing up where it's no longer welcome. So if you're caught in the tension between forcing and releasing, ask yourself, not what you're afraid to lose, but what you're afraid to admit is already gone. When the fight no longer serves growth, surrender becomes wisdom. And wisdom is quiet. It doesn't prove. It doesn't plead. It simply knows. That's the kind of strength that sustains, the kind that keeps your soul intact. Don't let pride chain you to something you've already outgrown. You don't have to stay to prove you're strong. Sometimes, the strongest thing you'll ever do is leave with your dignity still in place. And when you do, when you stop holding what's hurting you, your hands finally become free to receive what's true. 6. Force creates resistance. Alignment creates flow. The more you force, the tighter things tighten. The more you align, the more life opens. You've felt this before, when you tried too hard, pushed too much, held on too tightly, and the result wasn't progress. It was tension, it was burnout, it was resistance meeting resistance. But when you step into the right thing at the right time, it moves differently. It doesn't need to be dragged, it meets you. Not because you demanded it, but because you matched it. That's what alignment feels like. Effort that doesn't drain you. Motion that doesn't hurt you. A path that doesn't require you to fight your way forward just to stay upright. We live in a world obsessed with effort. Push harder, work longer, grind more. But effort without direction creates friction. Movement without alignment creates noise. And no matter how hard you push, what isn't meant for you, or not meant for you yet, won't unfold through pressure. It will resist. Not because you're not worthy, but because you're out of rhythm. Timing matters. Readiness matters. The internal state you bring into the world shapes what the world reflects back to you. And when you align your actions with clarity, with emotional control, with quiet intention, life begins to shift with you. It doesn't mean it gets easier, it means it becomes cleaner, more honest, more yours. Alignment starts from the inside, not in your schedule, not in your plan, but in your presence. When you're clear on who you are, you no longer need to force every door open. Some open simply because you're now the version of yourself who belongs on the other side. In the Stoic tradition, peace is not the absence of difficulty. It's the absence of internal contradiction. When your values, your energy, and your actions match, you stop struggling to create flow. You become it. You might be forcing something right now. A project that never lands. A conversation that keeps looping. A version of success that feels more exhausting than fulfilling. And maybe it's not because you're doing it wrong. Maybe it's because you're trying to force something that hasn't been aligned for a long time. The harder you grip, the more it slips. The louder you push, the more the world retreats. But when you slow down and realign, when you act with presence instead of panic, you begin to notice what you missed while forcing it. The better timing, the softer answer, the quieter path. There's wisdom in stepping back, not to escape, but to adjust, to see where you've been moving against your own center. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to push through, but to pause, recalibrate, and walk forward in sync with yourself again. That's not giving up. That's growing up. That's owning your energy, so your energy can begin to do the work for you. You don't have to fight for every inch of peace. Some peace comes when you stop fighting. You don't have to prove you're worthy by how much you endure. You prove it by how wisely you choose where your effort belongs. Not everything needs to be conquered. Some things just need to be aligned with. And when you move in flow, you don't move weaker, you move smarter, more rooted, less reactive. And from that place, the life you've been chasing stops running. It starts to recognize you. Because you're finally in sync with the version of yourself that no longer forces life to bend, but simply becomes someone life naturally meets. That's when things start to move, not because you pushed, but because you finally let them. 7. Control feels safe, but it steals your peace. We don't always call it control. Sometimes we call it care, responsibility, leadership, love. But behind the constant managing, adjusting, fixing, there's often a quiet fear. The fear is that if we don't hold everything in place, it will all fall apart. That fear makes us tighten our grip on people, on outcomes, on timing. And the tighter we hold, the heavier everything becomes. You may think you're protecting something, but what you're really losing is your peace. Control gives the illusion of safety. It tells you that if you can just predict everything, nothing will hurt. But life doesn't work like that. People don't work like that. And the more you try to dictate how things unfold, the more disconnected you become from what's real. You can't control your partner's growth. You can't program your children's path. You can't force respect, loyalty, or love. The Stoics knew this. Freedom doesn't come from dominating the world. It comes from mastering your inner response to what you cannot command. Control is exhausting, not because the world is so chaotic, but because micromanaging every detail fractures your clarity. Your nervous system never gets to rest. You're always anticipating the next variable, the next disappointment, the next mistake. And while it might feel like strength from the outside, inside, it's just anxiety disguised as discipline. You don't sleep deeply. You don't laugh freely. You're present, but you're not at peace. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying what was never yours. You're not meant to architect every moment of someone else's becoming. You're not meant to guarantee outcomes. You're meant to show up grounded, clear, and emotionally steady, so that even when life moves beyond your grasp, you remain intact. That's real influence, not control, but calm. And calm can only exist where control is no longer the master. There's a strength in saying, I trust, not passively, not blindly, but because you know your role, and you know the line between guidance and grasping. When you lead with inner clarity instead of outer force, people respond differently. They breathe easier around you, they open up, and strangely, they move closer. Not because you pulled them, but because your energy no longer pushes them away. You might be in a season right now where something feels out of your hands. A relationship that isn't meeting you, a business that isn't growing fast enough, a child making choices you wouldn't make. And you want to step in, take charge, redirect it all. But before you do, pause. Ask yourself, is this about love or is this about fear? Is this about leading or controlling? Because there's a difference, and the cost of control is often your own peace. The Stoic approach doesn't ask you to detach from life. It asks you to engage from a place of centered stillness, to recognize what belongs to you and what doesn't. And once you learn that, you begin to release. Not everything, just the things that were never yours to begin with. The outcome, the timeline, the approval, the result. When you finally stop trying to control what's outside your circle of power, you return to where your strength truly is, your choices, your presence, your state of mind. That's where peace lives. Not in the outer certainty, but in the inner stability. And in that quiet surrender, something profound happens. You realize you were never powerless. You were just scattering your power in too many directions, and now you're choosing to bring it home. Let go. Not to lose control, but to stop losing yourself. Let go. Not to escape, but to breathe again. Because peace is never found in the grip, it's found in the release. And sometimes the strongest thing you'll ever do is simply loosen your hold. Letting go is not a single act. It's a discipline. A quiet, deliberate choice you make daily. To stop forcing, to stop chasing, and to begin living from a place of calm clarity. Throughout this journey, we've explored what it means to surrender with strength, to align with life rather than fight against it, and to release the grip that's been stealing your peace. You now understand. Control creates tension, but presence creates power. Resistance drains you. Alignment restores you. And your energy speaks louder than your effort ever could. Each moment you pause, reflect, and choose peace over pressure is a moment of transformation. It's not about giving up your ambition. It's about giving up the need to suffer for it. That shift from urgency to wisdom is where flow begins. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes more than words. It becomes your daily practice, the way you walk, respond, and hold space within yourself. So start today, in small ways, in your breath, your reactions, your choices. Let this be the turning point where you begin to lead, not with force, but with focus. And if this message speaks to something you've lived through, I invite you to share your story below. Because of that honesty, you might give someone else the courage to surrender. And finally, feel free.